Veterans Day is about history and remembrance, but much more than that. It's about service, integrity, duty, honor, excellence, and country. More about that later. First, some history and perspective. More than 100 years ago, on November 11th, 1917, at 1100 hours, the armistice for the war to end all wars was declared in effect. Here in the U.S., a national holiday, Armistice Day, was proclaimed to be celebrated on November 11th of each year. We now celebrate that day as Veterans Day. Sadly, what we now know as World War I was not the end, but the beginning of a century when American principles of freedom, equality, and justice would be not only questioned but be regarded as dangerous to the goals of various dictatorships around the world. On December 7th, 1941, a day that shall live in infamy as President Roosevelt declared, enemy forces attacked Pearl Harbor, and we were forced into World War II, defeating Nazi Germany in 1945 and then defeating Japan ending in 1946, cost $4 trillion in today's money and took over 400,000 American lives. Another 670,000 were wounded. America and her allies, most importantly our British allies, answered that call and freedom and equality prevailed. Before that terrible conflict ended, between 80 and 90 million people were killed. This we cannot ever let happen again. Our American armed forces are the first line of defense against that. In early 1950, once again, America answered the call to arms in Korea. That was known as the Forgotten War because our veterans of that war were never appropriately recognized for their sacrifices. Those of our veterans who were there have never forgotten that war, though. America responded once again in Vietnam, my generation's war, when returning veterans were again not honored for their sacrifices, but time has somewhat corrected that injustice. 50,000 Americans paid the ultimate price. After those hot wars, we were still in the period known as the Cold War that began shortly after World War II ended, when the Soviet Union challenged the universal principles upon which America was founded. That war had many unsung heroes and casualties, ending when President Reagan stood in Berlin and challenged the Soviet leaders to tear down this wall. Shortly after that historic moment, the Soviet Union collapsed, and scholars proclaimed it the ultimate victory, calling it the end of history. By that they meant that the principles of equality, freedom, justice, and the rule of law were ascendant and unassailable. The world would, at long last, enter an era of peace and prosperity. They were wrong. Unfortunately, preservation of our freedoms is an ongoing, never-ending struggle. When yet another dictator invaded a small country, Kuwait, in 1990, America once again mounted an international coalition to repel the invaders and restore legitimate governance. Later, in Kosovo, American air power stopped the genocide, all in a day's work. After 9/11, America responded as we have throughout history, taking the fight to the terrorist enemies. Our veterans proved once again that we are all united in our quest for freedom and equality, and America would not be deterred from protecting our fundamental principles and values. Our armed forces continued our longest ever wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The final chapters of those conflicts have yet to be written. They are most assuredly dark days ahead, but I am confident that although they may be sorely tested, our uniquely American freedoms and values will prevail. Today we honor our veterans, but perhaps more importantly, today we are passing the torch of liberty, freedom, and equality to a new generation. Throughout my career as an Air Force Space and Missile officer, I've always been privileged to work with and command our youngest, best, and brightest. We launched space missions, including the Space Shuttle, Atlas, Delta, Titan, and the satellite system we all take for granted, GPS. Every day demanded excellence, or we would vaporize about $1 billion worth of taxpayers' money. My spouse, Mary, also an Air Force colonel, commanded a medical unit and was deployed for Desert Storm. We left our son, Michael, with his grandmother as we answered our country's call. Mary was pivotal to Air Force humanitarian deployments to Peru and Ecuador, bringing medical care to remote areas that otherwise would have none. That exemplifies our American values. Michael, whom I commissioned as a second lieutenant in 2006, went from being a cadet to being entrusted with piloting multi-million-dollar aircraft within 10 months. Within 18 months, he was commanding combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. The average age of his combat aircrew? 24. Mike is an Air Force major now with many more than 100 combat missions to his credit. Just doing his job, if you ask him. You will find your best way to serve. Sometimes you might look at the world and wonder where you fit. But to paraphrase President Reagan, some people wonder they have made a difference in this world. Service members and our veterans don't have that problem. It may never be easy, and at times it might seem to you that whatever you can do is insignificant, but as the philosopher Gandhi observed, whatever you do may be insignificant, but it's very important that you do it. He meant, of course, that each one of us must do our duty. Doing your duty, no matter what, is one of the best demonstrations of honor and integrity. When the torch passes to you, recall Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, Here am I, send me. Doing the difficult, dangerous, often thankless jobs to keep our country safe and secure is the epitome of duty, honor, and country. One of the most incredible things I have experienced in my life and career is this. In all the darkest hours of our country, all the best, bravest, and brightest step up and overcome the challenge. Making predictions is difficult, especially about the future, but I know that whatever challenges you face, you will see your duty and do it. Thank you for your invitation today. It has been my privilege to be here as your speaker. In closing, to veterans here and everywhere, thank you for your service. May God bless us all, and may God bless the United States of America.